Recently, I chose a game that was so far outside of my normal genre that it might as well have been in the adult-only section on Steam. God, that line sucked. Femboy Aim Trainer? Top selling? Guys! I was browsing Steam on an off day, bored of my usual haunts and trying to find something that struck my fancy. You see, I often browse the Steam store the way that some people window shop in a mall, glancing and passing at maybe 30 games before going back to the same thing I've been playing for the past 3 months. A game caught my eye this time though. A quirky subversion of Save the Princess with a unique art direction and a simple choose-your-own-adventure style gameplay that seemed pretty easy to get into. This game reminded me in some ways of my experience playing Inscription. Just how blown away I was by the unique, interesting, creative direction that the developers took. And yes, it doesn't have the wildly addictive card game attached to it, and the gameplay is a choose-your-own-adventure, although it is very much so still engaging. Now, I'm not a big fan normally of the choose-your-own-adventure style, partially because it makes me feel like I'm reading those Goosebump books from when I was a kid, the ones that are like, turn to page 97 if you choose this. Now, before you get your hopes too high, it is not quite at the same level. I mean, that's a pretty tall order. Not a lot is gonna match a game like Inscription or a game like Undertale. They broke the mold. There has been a wave of games inspired by these works, expanding upon the ingenuity they experienced, making things I would have never imagined a decade ago. Well, I guess, I don't know. When did Undertale come out? Is it a decade? God, I'm fucking old. All I know is that the Pope has it. He probably didn't play it because, I mean, come on, he's the fucking Pope. But MatPat gave it to him, so. Slay the Princess's direction is different than these games, though. It's interested in the idea of a narrative within the confines of the medium of gaming itself. A medium where any schmuck can listen to the heart-wrenching, time-sensitive narrative that the plot is based on, and then do God knows what for the next 40 hours that has nothing to do with it. Like, say,
you're here to slay her. If you don't, it will be the end of the world. Seriously? You're just going to turn around and leave? Do you even know where you're going?
Or murder everything that breathes. Or robbing and running over every pedestrian in sight. Why not? Or, my personal favorite, building a giant phallic monument. God, if my game doesn't have dick and balls in it, I'm gonna put them there. Before I delve too far into the interesting narrative ideas that this game uses and is interested in, let me set the stage a bit. You got anything to say, buddy? Yeah? You heard it here first, guys. He knows what he's talking about. All right, bud, I'll let you go. I want to state that although I am going to be summarizing portions of the game, talking about some of the possible endings, I really do think that this is a game you should play yourself. And if you don't want to play it, you could also just watch. I think Markiplier is playing it right now. I wrote the script like 3 weeks ago, so he might be done with it. Let me tell you guys, nothing feels quite as fucking weird as standing here talking to myself, and by myself, I mean an inanimate object while my cat licks his asshole on the ground in front of my feet. The game begins and we are introduced to the protagonist and the narrator.
You're on a path in the woods.
The narrator starts setting the scene and immediately establishes the general style of the game. A tonal dissonance between subject and demeanor. Jovial, humorous dialogue placed over pretty dark subject matter. Because this game is in the style of a visual novel, I was expecting it to be pretty linear. Something where the choose-your-own-adventure Dragon Quest style gameplay remains pretty linear and gets you to a similar spot, but has these branching quests of different linear storylines. And while it does do this, although to a much grander scale than anything I've played like this before, it manages to create an overarching narrative that directly interacts with and thematically discusses the very idea of these branching narratives. The game quickly points out the distance between the narrative expectations and the very control that the player themselves has over that narrative, giving you an option pretty much right off the bat to say fuck you to the narrator and say, nah, I'm actually gonna save her. Which, I mean, is kind of the simp option. I mean, not only is this a great introduction to the personality of the game, it also immediately simulates the fact that you are within a game, and the player is likely to immediately try and break it by destroying the figurative digital walls. Ironically, if you choose this option, the game does actually literally trap you within the confines of the narrative in a hilarious way. In my first playthrough, I was drawn to the semi-comedic, semi-politically correct option of saying, hell yeah, I'm gonna fucking kill that monarch.
That's the spirit.
And without a single shred of remorse, guilt, hell, not even a little bit of sweat on my palms, killed that princess. Then the game got interesting. You then wake up in a loop of gameplay. Each chosen path directly influences your next playthrough's interaction with the princess, and also creating more and more dissonant voices of the heroes from your previous playthroughs. Each one highlighting that the protagonist isn't in control of himself, and his personality is directly created and influenced by your choices in the game, which is just, with such standouts as pessimistic or defeated hero, I forget their name, and brave hero, offering really funny dialogue in your next playthroughs.
Compliment her on those gleaming blades. There's nothing better than a capable woman. I hate existing.
The creativity on display here is staggering. In one playthrough, through each consecutive run, you slowly turn the princess into just this monstrosity of blades in your dance of murder. Sounds weirdly hot. Another turns her into a caricature of a princess, empty of individual personality and instead being wholly consumed by her obsession with you. Hell, there's even a Dami Mommy playthrough where she essentially becomes an evil goddess who steps on you. After each playthrough, the game and the narrator and protagonist become increasingly self-aware. Eventually, you encounter some kind of primordial being that cuts you off from the narrator and protagonist and asks you to give them more possible variations of the princess. Each princess added to its catalog transforms it into a 10-headed princess monstrosity that is simultaneously terrifying and wildly interesting. Before I get too far into the ending, I want to discuss some of the narrative experiences that really made me love this game. The way that it explores how we as players exert control over these characters. The game both demonstrates it through its gameplay and directly discusses it with the content of its story, through how the princess and protagonist are shaped by your choices. When you, as the player, choose to continually treat the princess like a damsel, she slowly loses all semblance of individuality. Her art hollows out, her voice acting changes, until eventually she's this hollow caricature of a human being that is simply and wholly obsessed with pleasing you. This path alone would have made the game interesting to me. A commentary on how damsels serve no purpose aside from demonstrating the worth of your protagonist while serving no narrative purpose themselves. Can you tell I hate damsels? What is crazy is that the game manages to have 3 or 4 different paths all based around this concept, exploring different facets of it. One where the princess becomes a ghost obsessed with the love that she has for you. And the one I said earlier, I can't remember the others, but I know there's like 3 or 4. There are so many honorable mentions that I should just stop, because otherwise I'm just gonna recite different possible endings for like 20 straight minutes. So on with the video. Before I move on, let me talk about my minor gripe. Although the game mitigates it via auto skips and blanking out previous choices, it still at times feels repetitive. The intro barely changes each playthrough, and in a normal run, you could end up doing it upwards of 15 times. Still, the game does manage to curtail this issue somewhat. Here is where I delve into the abstract. This game utilizes a form of absurdism that is designed to interrogate the very nature of video game narratives. I would liken it to the way that Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy does the same with the genre of the novel, while also simultaneously being involved and deeply rooted within that idea. It's like how Deadpool manages to make fun of superhero movies while simultaneously following every single rule and trope that superhero movies already fall into, but making fun of them, and then it's just a whole thing. It utilizes the absurd in a way that guides the reader, or player in this case, towards interrogating and recognizing the different things that we might take for granted within a narrative itself. You, as the player, shed the shell of the hero. You discard all of the previous characters you've interacted with and come face to face alone with a primordial being you don't understand. No princess, no narrator, just you, the player, and this being that represents something so existentially meta that it blew my mind the first time I played it. This game directly confronts you with your own impact on the game. Now, it's not the first game to do this, nor will it be the last. Undertale tackles a similar concept, but where Undertale is concerned with demonstrating your effect on these fictional characters' lives, positing that they each had their own individual and consistent livelihoods that you personally affected, Slay the Princess goes beyond this. It shows that you as the player are not only changing the character and events, but you're changing all of the characters around you to fit the narrative expectations that your choices have shown. Everything is shown to be inconsistent in the face of your choices as the player. The narrator, who is a representation of the writers themselves, eventually shows that they have no power over you and are completely discarded in the final moments of each playthrough. Sure, the narrator tells you what to do, but it also demonstrates its complete lack of power. You can instead derail the game and make it tell you or demonstrate what you wanted it to tell you all along. A princess that demands your everlasting servitude? Sure. A princess that becomes a machine of blades solely concerned with killing you, entering a time loop of mutual murder? You got it. Refuse to interact with the narrative at all and instead run away from every chance it gives you? Princess didn't even exist. I think you get the idea. Hell, there's even an indecision route where you slowly break the game down into weird impressionist polygonal pathways that have no ending. See, we even have a path for all you impressionist fans out there. I won't spoil the real endings, but I played through probably 30 different ones, and to beat the game, I think that you need to go through 30 minor endings and 10 major endings, and I definitely probably did half of them in my time playing it. I'm sure I missed something. I'm not infallible. In fact, I'm particularly fallible, believe it or not. Now, this alone is really interesting, and the game manages to place this all within a medium and gameplay style that really lets the idea come to the surface and float? Shine in the sun? I swear to God, this metaphor was going somewhere. I love storytelling. If you couldn't tell by the fact that I have like 8 videos and 3 of them now are about storytelling. Narratives have a special ability to teach people new things without them ever having to experience the stimulus and strife that come with them. It can teach you to respect trauma and understand just how difficult life can be for some people, even though you never truly have to experience that strife yourself. It teaches us lessons and gives us flawed characters that we can relate to. It carries through every part of the human experience. It's humanity's very first invention. Okay, I mean, it's obviously not our first invention. I mean, we had to make language to tell stories, and then I'm sure some Cro-Magnon fucker stuck a sharp stone on the end of a stick before them. But you get what I'm saying. It's like the most, like, language is the most complex thing we've ever invented, and narratives are an intrinsic part of that experience. There is no language without stories because we can't abstractly describe things without in some way telling a story about it. People were sitting around fires telling each other stories as far back as our brows hung over our eyes and we slept on hay on a cold stone cave floor. Every new medium of art opens a pathway for us to tell stories in a new, interesting, and interactive way. A new style or cadence for a story to be experienced by its participators. Writing gave us the ability to capture the exact idea of a narrative on a physical space of paper. Novels took this experience and increased it into a perspective that allowed us to look inside of the minds of other people. Movies and visual mediums allowed us to tell stories that took place within a slice of time. All of these mediums get explored to their depths by people who are far more talented and creative than I'll ever be. I could list examples all day, but I feel like if you know what I'm talking about at this point, you already know. And if you think I'm a crazy, pretentious asshole, you've probably already left the video. So in this way, games tend to disappoint me. And sure, there are standouts that I'll always remember, like Undertale and Inscription and Doki Doki Literature Club and Nier Automata, that utilize everything in the game's experience to artistically portray a story. Now, I'm not saying that games that don't do this are bad. I'm just saying that as a medium, there's just not as much creative use of it like there are of other mediums. You see, where many arts develop by people being funded by those who appreciate it to do new and creative things. Yo, could I have some of that? Or in the case of the church being paid to paint every single saint and Jesus like 10,000 times, and then being told that in your free time you can paint whatever the fuck you want. And I guess modern furries, if you know, they're really, they throw money at art. Like, that's artists. If you're looking for money and you don't mind making some fursonas, that's how you support your artist career. With games as an industry, it's not exactly easy to pitch experimental storytelling to your board of investors. Wait, hold up. $700 million? Twiddling their oil baron mustaches and asking you how you can monetize your creativity with more microtransactions and a battle pass and freemium services. There are, of course, standouts, almost all of them indie, but not always. And games like Slay the Princess make me want to applaud and support their artistic creativity. Games, I think, are so open for artistic impact that it makes it even more difficult to conceptualize and implement for the developers. You can make nearly anything a reality, down to the very gameplay itself. This is what Slay the Princess has done, but it also makes me understand why this level of medium-based creativity is not on display more within the genre. Art is about manipulating all of your medium's available resources in conjunction with its history. It's about creating a tapestry of stimulus that is simultaneously greater than all of its constituent parts. It's about making something unique, but also influenced by the things that have come before it. No idea or piece of art exists in a vacuum. This means that in the context of games, there are just so many things to wrap your head around. Think about the way that Nier Automata implements its inventory system in a way that makes it more apparent that you are an android. Think about how some games use being self-aware to make the player manipulate the very game files, like Doki Doki Literature Club. A part of me wonders if gaming is just too young for us to really see the point in time where these things become more explored. It makes me wonder if games like Slay the Princess and Undertale and Nier Automata and Inscription and others that I probably haven't played are only breaking the surface of what the future will hold. Slay the Princess is uniquely interested in narratives in games, something that is a lot easier for us to wrap our heads around. Everyone knows a story. Everyone has interacted with one in their lifetime. And although we might not all like or resonate with the same stories, we all understand them. Yet despite a story and narrative in the game being one of these simpler concepts to explore, Slay the Princess still takes it to an entirely unique, interesting, introspective, and just beautiful meta-analysis. This, in part, I think, is more related to the ingenuity and creativity of the developers and writers. Anyway, game good, play game, game funny. Like video, subscribe to, or the princess gets it. I'll do it, man. I'm fucking crazy. Come on, I'll do it. Hit the button. It's right there. It's shiny. If you hit it, some confetti comes out. Come on, man. Come on, do it. Do it. Oh, thank God I didn't want... Oh, shit.